Imagine a massive bull, left behind in silence, his head bowed as if his story had already ended. Farmers whispered he was too old, too weak, too useless. His future? Nothing but loneliness. But then, something no one expected happened. This forgotten giant revealed a secret that would flip everything we thought we knew about him, and left even the experts speechless. Jake Mercer had seen his share of hard luck, but finding a bull collapsed near his fence line on a frozen February morning felt like the universe piling on. The animal was massive, easily 1,800 pounds, but he lay on his side in the dead grass, ribs visible through his dull coat, breath coming in shallow clouds. Jake approached slowly, checking for brands or ear tags. Nothing. Just an old bull, abandoned or escaped, left to die in the Nebraska cold. Jake was 52, with weathered hands and a back that ached every morning. The Mercer Ranch had been in his family for 3 generations, but it was bleeding money. Cattle prices had been brutal for 2 years running, and his herd was aging out. He'd already sold off a third of his breeding stock just to keep the bank from foreclosing. He should have walked away. One more mouth to feed, one more problem he couldn't afford. But Jake knelt beside the bull anyway, running his hand along the animal's neck. The bull's eyes opened, dark, exhausted, but still alive. "You're a stubborn son of a bitch, aren't you?" Jake muttered. He called his neighbor Tom Chen, who had a livestock trailer. Together they managed to load the bull and get him back to Jake's barn. It took 2 hours and every bit of strength both men had, but they did it. Tom stood in the barn doorway afterward, catching his breath, watching Jake fill a water trough. "What are you planning to do with him?" "Keep him alive, I guess." "Jake, that bull's ancient. Look at those teeth." Tom pointed at the animal's worn-down incisors, visible as the bull drank deeply. "He's 10 years old minimum, maybe 12. His breeding days are long over. Maybe he just needs some decent feed and rest." Tom shook his head. "You can't afford charity cases right now. You know that." Jake did know that. His wife Sarah had left 6 months ago, tired of watching the ranch fail, tired of the stress and the silence. His daughter Emma was in college in Lincoln, working 2 jobs to supplement the tuition he could barely afford. The bank had given him until June to catch up on the mortgage, or they'd start foreclosure proceedings. But something about this bull, the way he'd looked at Jake with those exhausted eyes, made him stay. "I'll call him Nathan," Jake said suddenly. Tom raised an eyebrow. "You're naming him? Jake, don't get attached. If he's as old as I think, he's worthless. You should call animal control, let them handle it." "He's got a name now. That makes him mine." Over the next 2 weeks, Nathan slowly recovered. Jake fed him quality hay, supplemented with grain he couldn't really afford. The bull's ribs gradually became less visible. His coat started to regain some shine. But it was clear Nathan had lived a hard life. Scars crisscrossed his shoulders, his hooves were overgrown and cracked, and those teeth told their own story. Jake brought Doc Harrison out to examine him. The vet was in his 70s, semi-retired, but still the best livestock specialist in 3 counties. He spent 20 minutes checking Nathan over, then pulled Jake aside. "He's old, Jake. 10, maybe 11 years. See those teeth?" Doc pointed to Nathan's mouth. "That wear pattern tells me he's been through rough conditions, probably poor nutrition for years before you found him." "But he's healthy otherwise?" "Physically, he's recovering well." "You've done good work." Doc paused. "But as a breeding bull, he's done. At his age, with that history, his fertility is shot. You're looking at a pet, not an asset." Jake felt his stomach sink. "You're sure?" "I've been doing this 40 years. Bulls peak at 4 to 6 years old. After 8, fertility drops hard. At 10, with his condition?" Doc shook his head. "I'd be shocked if he could sire a single calf." That night, Jake sat in his kitchen, staring at a stack of bills he couldn't pay. The mortgage notice sat on top, 3 months overdue. Sarah's lawyer had sent papers about dividing assets. Emma had called earlier, her voice tight with stress about her student loans. He'd saved Nathan's life, but he couldn't save his own. His phone rang. It was Frank Morrison, a cattle broker from Omaha. Jake, heard you found a bull. Wondering if you're looking to sell. How'd you hear about that? Small towns, man. Tom Chen mentioned it at the feed store, said the bull's old but big. I've got a buyer who needs animals for a small operation, not breeding stock, just lawn ornaments, basically. Rich folks who want authentic ranch atmosphere. Frank paused. I can offer you $800 cash. Tomorrow. $800. It wouldn't save the ranch, but it would buy him another month. Jake looked out the window at the barn, where Nathan stood in his stall, finally looking content for the first time since Jake had found him. I need to think about it, Jake said. Don't think too long. Offer's good until Friday. Thursday morning, Jake walked out to the barn to feed Nathan. The bull greeted him with a low rumble, not aggressive, just acknowledging. Over 2 weeks, they'd developed a routine. Nathan would eat while Jake mucked the stall, sometimes talking about nothing just to fill the silence. Doc says you're done, Jake said, dumping grain into the trough. Too old to be useful. Just like me, I guess. He leaned against the stall door. Got a buyer for you. $800. Probably should take it. Nathan lifted his head, grain falling from his mouth, and looked directly at Jake. Those dark eyes held something. Intelligence, maybe. Understanding. Yeah, I don't want to either, Jake admitted. That's when he noticed something. Nathan's behavior had changed over the past few days. The bull had become more alert, more energetic. His head was higher, his movements more confident. There was something in his demeanor that Jake had seen before in younger bulls, a certain presence, a dominance. Tom Chen showed up that afternoon with his daughter Lisa, who was home from vet school for spring break. She'd heard about the rescued bull and wanted to see him. Dad said you found him half dead, Lisa said, leaning on the fence. He looks incredible now. Great recovery. Doc Harrison says he's too old to breed. Lisa tilted her head, studying Nathan. Mind if I take a look at him? We've been studying bovine reproduction this semester. Knock yourself out. Lisa spent 15 minutes examining Nathan, checking his body condition, his movement, his overall health. Finally, she stepped back, a puzzled expression on her face. Your vet said he's not fertile? Said at his age, with his history, it's basically impossible. Huh. Lisa pulled out her phone, taking photos of Nathan's teeth. These are definitely worn down. He's old, no question. But... She walked around Nathan again. His testicular development looks normal. His behavior is confident. See how he's watching us? That's breeding bull behavior. And his body condition is excellent now. So maybe Doc Harrison is right. At 10 years old, most bulls would be done. She looked at Jake. But I've read studies about outliers, bulls that maintain fertility way longer than average. Genetic anomalies, basically. Rare, but it happens. You think Nathan might be one? I think it's worth testing before you sell him. Lisa grinned. What if everyone's wrong about him? Jake looked at Nathan, standing proud in the February sun, no longer the broken animal he'd found dying in his field. What if everyone was wrong? Jake didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table, calculator and papers spread out, running the numbers for the 100th time. $800 from selling Nathan would cover 1 month's mortgage payment. Maybe buy him enough time to figure something out. But Lisa's words kept echoing. What if everyone's wrong about him? At 6 a.m., he made his decision. He called Frank Morrison. That bull I found? He's not for sale. There was a pause on the other end. Jake, you sure? $800 cash right now, you need it. I know what I need. Jake's jaw tightened, and I'm keeping him. After hanging up, he stared at the phone, wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. Lisa came back the next day with equipment borrowed from the vet school. If we're going to test Nathan's fertility, we need to do it right, she said, setting up in the barn. I'll need a semen sample for analysis. Tom Chen showed up to help, still skeptical. This is crazy, Jake. You're betting your ranch on a 10-year-old bull with worn-down teeth. I'm betting on a hunch. Hunches don't pay mortgages. The collection process took an hour. Nathan cooperated, surprisingly calm for such a large animal. Lisa worked efficiently, labeling samples and packing them in a cooler. "I'll run these at the university lab," she said. "Should have results in 3 days. Looking for sperm count, motility, morphology, the whole picture. And if he's sterile like Doc Harrison said?" Lisa shrugged. "Then you've got an 1,800-pound pet and an expensive lesson about wishful thinking." Those 3 days were the longest of Jake's life. He threw himself into ranch work, repairing fences, checking on his remaining cattle, avoiding phone calls from the bank. Sarah called once, her voice cold and businesslike, talking about signing divorce papers. Emma called too, asking if he was okay. He lied and said everything was fine. Nathan, meanwhile, seemed transformed. The bull had put on weight, his coat now glossy black in the winter sun. He moved with confidence around the pasture Jake had moved him to, no longer the broken animal he'd found a month ago. On the 3rd day, Lisa called. "Jake, you sitting down?" His heart sank. "That bad?" "That's the thing, it's not bad at all." Her voice was excited, disbelieving. "Nathan's fertility results they're exceptional. His sperm count is higher than most 6-year-old bulls I've studied. Motility is 92%. Morphology is nearly perfect." Jake gripped the phone. "What does that mean?" "It means Doc Harrison was wrong. Nathan isn't just fertile. He's extraordinarily fertile. I've never seen numbers like this in a bull his age. Never." "How is that possible?" "Genetics, probably. Some bulls are just built different. They maintain reproductive capability way longer than average. It's rare, but it happens." Lisa paused. "Jake, if you can prove Nathan can sire quality calves, he could be worth serious money, like 5 figures or more. Breeding fees alone could save your ranch." Jake felt dizzy. "But who's going to believe it? An old bull with worn teeth found abandoned? Every breeder around here will think I'm running a scam." "Then we prove it," Lisa said simply. "You've got cows that need breeding, right?" Jake thought about his remaining herd. 23 cows, mostly good stock, but not producing like they used to. "Yeah, they're coming into heat over the next few weeks." "Perfect. Breed them with Nathan. When those calves are born, they'll be proof." "That's 7 months away. The bank's foreclosing in 4. Silence on the other end. Then, "What if we could speed up the timeline? Show immediate results?" "How?" "Artificial insemination. I've got contacts, breeders who might be willing to take a chance on discounted breeding fees. If Nathan's genetics are as good as I think, those calves will speak for themselves. It was risky. Hell, it was insane. But it was a chance." "Let's do it," Jake said. Word spread fast. Lisa posted Nathan's fertility results on a few breeding forums, carefully omitting his age at first, just showcasing the numbers. The responses were immediate. Disbelief, accusations of fraud, but also cautious interest. One response stood out. It was from Marcus Webb, a prominent Angus breeder in Wyoming with a reputation for taking calculated risks. "Those numbers real? If so, I want to see this bull. Coming through Nebraska next week. I'll stop by." Tom Chen wasn't optimistic when Jake told him. "Marcus Webb? Jake, that man's forgotten more about cattle breeding than we'll ever know. When he finds out Nathan's 10 years old, he'll laugh you off his property. Or he'll see what we see. Which is potential." Marcus Webb arrived on a cold Wednesday morning, driving a pristine truck towing an empty trailer. He was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, dressed in expensive boots and a Stetson that probably cost more than Jake's mortgage payment. Jake met him in the driveway, trying to hide his nervousness. "Mr. Webb, thanks for coming." Marcus nodded curtly. "Let's see this bull. I don't have all day." Nathan was in the pasture, grazing near the fence. When he saw the approaching men, he lifted his head, alert and imposing. The morning sun caught his coat, making him look almost majestic. Marcus stopped walking. He stared at Nathan for a long moment, then turned to Jake. "How old is he?" Jake's heart hammered. 10 years. 10. Marcus's expression didn't change. "And you're telling me that bull has fertility numbers like a 5-year-old prime breeder?" "Yes, sir." Marcus climbed the fence, moving with surprising agility for his age. He approached Nathan slowly, respectfully. The bull watched him, but didn't move away. Marcus walked around him, studying his build, his movement, his bearing. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Finally, Marcus climbed back over the fence. He looked at Jake with an unreadable expression. "You know what I see when I look at that bull?" "What?" "I see something everyone else missed. Something I've been looking for my whole career. 7 months felt like 7 years. Jake used Marcus Webb's advance to catch up on the mortgage, pay off Emma's tuition for the semester, and finally fix the broken equipment that had been sitting in the barn for 2 years. The ranch wasn't thriving yet, but it was breathing again. Nathan had become something of a local celebrity. Word spread through the tight-knit Nebraska ranching community about the miracle bull, the 10-year-old castaway who'd defied every expert's expectations. Neighboring ranchers stopped by to see him, equal parts curious and skeptical. "Proof's in the calves," they'd say. "We'll see what gets born." Jake repeated those words to himself every night. Because if Nathan's offspring didn't deliver, this entire gamble would collapse. Marcus Webb's contract was contingent on quality. If those calves were average, or worse, subpar, the breeding fees would evaporate, and Jake would be right back where he started. In May, Marcus called. "They're coming. First calf born this morning." Jake's heart stopped. "And?" "Get up here. You need to see this yourself." The drive to Wyoming took 6 hours. Jake barely noticed the landscape passing by. His mind was racing through every possible scenario. What if the calf was deformed? What if Nathan's age had caused genetic problems? What if... He pulled up to Marcus Webb's sprawling ranch just after sunset. Marcus was waiting by the calving barn, his expression unreadable. "Before you go in," Marcus said, "I want you to understand something. I've been breeding Angus cattle for 40 years. I've seen thousands of calves. Tens of thousands." Jake's stomach churned. But I've never seen anything like this." Marcus opened the barn door. "Come on." Inside, under warm lights, stood one of Marcus's prize Angus cows, and beside her, nursing, was a calf that made Jake's breath catch. The calf was perfectly proportioned, strong legs, broad chest, a coat so black it seemed to absorb light, but it was more than physical perfection. There was something about the way the calf carried itself, even at just hours old. Confidence. Presence. "That's Nathan's," Jake whispered. "That's Nathan's." Marcus walked closer, his voice filled with something Jake had never heard from the stoic breeder. Awe. Birth weight was 92 pounds, ideal for Angus, perfect conformation. But it's more than that. He pointed to the calf's head structure, its muscling. "See that bone structure? That's genetic superiority. That calf's worth 10 times what its mother is." Jake felt tears sting his eyes. "The others?" "2 more born yesterday, 3 more coming this week. All early indicators are the same." Marcus turned to Jake. "Your bull isn't just fertile, Jake. He's exceptional. His genetics are producing calves that could redefine quality standards. How is that possible? He's 10 years old, he was abandoned, half-starved. That's what makes this so incredible." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing genetic reports. Lisa sent Nathan's DNA for analysis. Turns out he's got a rare genetic marker, something that appears in less than 1% of cattle. It's associated with superior growth rates, disease resistance, and fertility. Nobody knew because nobody bothered to test him. Jake stared at the calf, his mind reeling. "What does this mean?" Marcus smiled. A real smile this time. "It means you're sitting on a gold mine. Once word gets out about these calves, every serious breeder in the country is going to want Nathan's genetics. We're talking 6-figure breeding fees, Jake. Easy." The news spread like wildfire. By June, all 5 of Nathan's calves had been born. Every single one was exceptional, superior in weight, conformation, and that intangible quality breeders called presence. Marcus photographed them obsessively, posting comparisons to standard Angus calves on breeding forums. The response was explosive. Accusations of photo manipulation came first, then demands for third-party verification. Marcus arranged for independent cattle judges to evaluate the calves. All 5 were rated in the top percentile for their age group. One judge called them the finest calves I've evaluated in 20 years. Jake's phone never stopped ringing. Breeders from Texas, Montana, Kansas, even California called with offers. Some wanted to buy Nathan outright, offers that climbed from $50,000 to $100,000 to $200,000. Jake turned them all down. "He's not for sale," Jake said over and over, "but we can discuss breeding rights." Tom Chen showed up one evening, shaking his head in disbelief. "You know what people are saying in town? That you made a deal with the devil, that there's no way a bull like Nathan should exist." Jealousy talking. Maybe. Or maybe they're right that this is too good to be true. Tom sat on Jake's porch, staring out at the pasture where Nathan grazed peacefully. "I'm happy for you, Jake. Really, I am. But don't let this money change who you are." Jake understood the warning. He'd seen it happen to other ranchers, a windfall that brought out the worst in people. Greed, paranoia, broken relationships. "Nathan's staying here," Jake said firmly. "This is his home, and mine." In July, the biggest test came. The American Angus Association, the gold standard for cattle breeding, requested a formal evaluation of Nathan and his offspring. If they certified Nathan's genetics as exceptional, his value would skyrocket. But if they found any irregularities or concerns, the entire house of cards could collapse. 2 evaluators arrived at the ranch on a scorching Tuesday morning. They spent 3 days examining Nathan, reviewing his health records, analyzing his offspring's data, and interviewing everyone involved. Jake barely slept. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. On the 3rd day, the lead evaluator, a stern woman named Dr. Patricia Hammond, called Jake into his kitchen. She spread papers across the table, genetic reports, health assessments, lineage documentation. "Mr. Mercer," she began, "in 30 years of evaluating cattle, I've never encountered a case quite like this." Jake's heart sank. "Is there a problem?" "The problem," Dr. Hammond said slowly, "is that Nathan shouldn't exist. His age, combined with his documented history of neglect and malnutrition, should have rendered him infertile. His genetic markers are rare but not unique. Yet somehow the combination has produced something extraordinary. So, what's your assessment?" Dr. Hammond looked up, and for the first time, Jake saw emotion in her expression. Wonder. "Nathan represents a genetic anomaly that occurs perhaps once in a generation. His offspring demonstrate consistent superior traits across multiple categories. Based on our analysis, the American Angus Association is prepared to certify Nathan as an elite heritage sire, the highest classification we offer." Jake couldn't speak. By September, Nathan's story had gone viral. A video titled, "The Bull Everyone Gave Up On" hit 10 million views in 3 days. News outlets from CNN to the BBC ran features. Jake's quiet Nebraska ranch became a pilgrimage site for cattle enthusiasts, journalists, and curiosity seekers. Jake hated every minute of it. "Mr. Mercer, just 5 minutes for an interview. We're offering $500,000 for exclusive documentary rights. What's your secret? How did you know Nathan was special?" The truth was simpler than anyone wanted to hear. He didn't know. He just refused to give up. The real problem started when the offers escalated. A genetics company from Switzerland offered $2 million to purchase Nathan outright for their breeding program. A billionaire rancher from Texas offered $3 million. Each offer came with assurances: the best care, state-of-the-art facilities, legacy preservation. Marcus Webb called, his voice urgent. "Jake, think about this carefully. $3 million would set you up for life. Set Emma up for life. Nathan's not for sale." "Jake, he stays here, Marcus. That's final." But the pressure didn't stop. It got worse. In October, Jake found tire tracks near his back fence. Someone had been surveilling the property. Then came the threatening letters, warning him that keeping such valuable genetics hostage was selfish. One letter suggested Nathan might disappear if Jake didn't accept reasonable offers. Tom Chen helped Jake install security cameras. This is insane. All over a bull. Not just a bull, Jake corrected. It's what he represents. Proof that value isn't about youth or perfection. Lisa, now graduated and working as a vet, visited regularly to check on Nathan. She'd been offered lucrative positions with breeding companies, all contingent on bringing Nathan with her. She'd turned them all down. They don't get it, she told Jake. Nathan's story isn't about profit. It's about second chances. But the most painful pressure came from an unexpected source. Emma came home for Thanksgiving, and Jake immediately sensed something was wrong. She was quiet during dinner, picking at her food, avoiding his eyes. Finally, she spoke. Dad, we need to talk. They sat on the porch, the November cold biting. Emma wrapped her coat tighter. I've been thinking about those offers, the money they're offering for Nathan. Jake's stomach tightened. Emma, just hear me out. She turned to face him. $3 million, Dad. Do you know what that means? No more worrying about droughts or cattle prices or whether the ranch will survive another bad year. You could retire, travel, actually enjoy your life instead of working yourself to death. Nathan's not leaving. Why? Emma's voice cracked. Because of pride, sentiment? Dad, he's a bull, an animal. Yes, he's special. But is he worth sacrificing your future? Our future? The words hit like a physical blow. You think I should sell him? I think you should consider it. Really consider it. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I've watched you struggle my entire life. Watched Mom leave because the stress broke her. Watched you choose this ranch over everything else. And now you have a chance to finally breathe, and you're saying no because of a bull you found less than a year ago? Jake stared out at the dark pasture where Nathan stood, a massive silhouette against the night sky. When I found Nathan, I was ready to give up, Jake said quietly. The ranch was failing. Your mother was gone. I felt like everything I'd worked for was pointless. He looked at Emma. But saving Nathan reminded me why I do this. It's not about money or success. It's about believing things have value even when the world says they don't. That's beautiful, Dad, but it doesn't pay bills. The breeding fees do. We're making more money than we ever have. For now. What happens when Nathan gets older, when he actually does lose his fertility? You'll have turned down millions for nothing. She had a point. Nathan was 10 now, nearly 11. Even with his exceptional genetics, time would eventually catch up. The offers wouldn't last forever. I need to think about this, Jake admitted. Emma squeezed his hand. That's all I'm asking. Jake didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, torn between his daughter's logic and his gut instinct. At 3 a.m., he gave up on sleep and walked to the barn. Nathan was lying down but stood when Jake entered, that familiar low rumble of greeting echoing in the quiet space. Everyone wants to take you away, Jake said, sitting on a hay bale. They say it's for your own good. Better facilities, expert care, genetic preservation. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm being selfish keeping you here. Nathan stepped closer, lowering his massive head until it was inches from Jake. But you chose to stay alive, Jake continued. When you were dying in that field, you could have given up. Nobody would have blamed you, but you didn't. You fought. And now they want to put you in some facility where you'll be a commodity, not a... He couldn't finish. Tears blurred his vision. The barn door creaked. Lisa stood in the doorway, wrapped in a thick jacket. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. How'd you know I was here? Because I know you. She sat beside him. Emma called me, told me about your conversation. She thinks I should sell Nathan. I know, and she's not wrong, from a practical standpoint. Lisa paused. But there's more to life than practical standpoints. Like what? Like integrity. Like keeping promises. Like showing the world that some things matter more than money. Lisa looked at Nathan. That bull changed everything. Not because of his genetics, but because you refuse to see him as disposable. If you sell him now, what message does that send? That I'm practical? Responsible? that everything has a price. Lisa stood. The world already believes that, Jake. Nathan's story was supposed to prove them wrong. The next morning, Jake called Marcus Webb. I've made my decision about the offers. And? Nathan stays. No sale. Not now, not ever. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. You're sure? I'm sure. Jake, I respect that. More than you know. Marcus's voice was warm. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Legacy isn't built on the highest bidder. After hanging up, Jake called the Swiss genetics company, the Texas billionaire, and every other entity that had made offers. One by one, he declined. The last call was the hardest, telling Emma, I can't sell him, sweetheart. I know you think I'm being foolish. I don't, Emma interrupted. I've been thinking about what you said, about value and belief. She paused. I was wrong, Dad. Nathan isn't just a bull. He's proof that you stand by what you believe in, even when it's hard. That's worth more than $3 million. Jake felt something break loose in his chest. Relief, pride, love. When did you get so wise? Emma laughed. I learned from a stubborn rancher who saves lost causes. That evening, Jake stood at Nathan's pasture fence, watching the bull graze in the fading light. The media circus would continue. The offers would keep coming. People would call him foolish, stubborn, irrational. But Nathan was home, and home is where he'd stay. 2 years later, Nathan turned 12 years old. The ranch had transformed. Jake had built a proper breeding facility, not to sell Nathan, but to manage the constant demand ethically. 40 calves now carried Nathan's genetics, scattered across 17 states. Every single one had proven exceptional. Emma had graduated and returned home, taking over the ranch's business operations. She'd turned Nathan's story into a consulting business, helping other ranchers identify overlooked potential in their herds. Dad taught me that value isn't obvious, she'd tell clients. Sometimes the best investment is the one everyone else passes by. Lisa had opened a veterinary practice on the property, specializing in geriatric livestock care. Nathan had become her inspiration, proof that age didn't mean obsolescence. But Jake knew the truth everyone avoided discussing. Nathan was slowing down. The bull still moved with dignity, still commanded respect. But his steps were heavier now. He slept more. Some mornings, Jake would find him standing still in the pasture, as if conserving energy. Dr. Hammond from the Angus Association visited in March, ostensibly to check on Nathan's latest offspring. But Jake saw the concern in her eyes when she examined the old bull. His fertility is declining, she said gently. Not gone, but diminishing. It's natural at his age. How long? Maybe another year of breeding viability. Maybe less. She paused. Jake, you've done something remarkable. Nathan's genetics are preserved in dozens of animals. His legacy is secure. But legacy felt hollow when Jake thought about losing his friend. In June, Jake made a decision. He called Marcus Webb. No more breeding contracts. Nathan's retiring. Jake, he's still producing. He's earned rest. Jake's voice was firm. He spent 10 years being used until someone threw him away. I won't do that to him. Marcus understood. You're a good man, Jake Mercer. The announcement shocked the breeding community. Offers flooded in for one last breeding, some reaching astronomical figures. Jake declined them all. Nathan's retirement became news. Articles celebrated the bull who'd defied age and expectations. But Jake didn't care about headlines anymore. He cared about the bull standing in the pasture, finally allowed to simply exist. Emma found Jake in the barn one September evening, sitting with Nathan like he'd done countless times. You okay, Dad? Just thinking about what happens after. After Nathan? Jake nodded. People will remember the miracle bull, the genetic anomaly, the money he generated. But that's not who he was. Then who was he? Jake thought carefully. He was a reminder that the world gets it wrong, that the things we discard often have the most value, that age and scars don't diminish worth, they prove survival. Emma sat beside her father. That's not just Nathan's story, it's yours too. Maybe, Jake smiled. I was pretty close to being discarded myself when I found him. You saved each other. Yeah, we did. Nathan lived 3 more years after retirement, peaceful years spent grazing, resting, and occasionally greeting the visitors who still came to see the legendary bull. On a cold February morning, almost exactly 5 years after Jake first found him, Nathan didn't get up. Jake found him lying peacefully in the pasture, his dark eyes still open but no longer seeing. There was no struggle, no pain, just a quiet end for a bull who'd fought hard enough. Jake knelt beside him, hand on that massive head, and cried. They buried Nathan on the ranch, on a hill overlooking the pasture where he'd spent his final years. The headstone was simple. Nathan Champion Bull, loyal friend. He taught us that worth cannot be measured by age. The funeral drew hundreds, ranchers, breeders, journalists, people whose lives Nathan had touched without ever knowing. Marcus Webb gave the eulogy. This bull changed the industry, but more importantly, he changed how we see value. He reminded us that the greatest treasures are often the ones we almost overlook. 5 years after Nathan's death, Jake stood on that hill, now 70 years old, watching his grandchildren play in the pasture below. Emma had married Tom Chen's son and taken over the ranch completely. Nathan's offspring had sired another generation. 40 calves had become 400, their genetics influencing herds across the country. But Jake's proudest legacy wasn't the bloodline, or the money, or the fame. It was the sanctuary Emma had built, a place for old, unwanted livestock. Bulls past their prime, cows considered worthless, animals everyone else had given up on. The sign at the entrance read, Nathan's Second Chance Ranch. Jake ran his hand over Nathan's headstone, weathered now by wind and time. You started something, old friend, he whispered. Taught us that every life has value, every being deserves dignity, and the best stories are about the ones who refuse to quit. A young bull, Nathan's great-grandson, grazed nearby, strong and healthy, carrying genetics the world had almost lost forever. Jake smiled. Nathan's body was gone, but his legacy lived in every animal given a second chance. Every person who learned to look past surfaces, every life saved because someone finally stopped and paid attention. The abandoned bull had taught them all the most important lesson. Worth isn't determined by youth, perfection, or other people's judgments. Sometimes the most valuable thing in the world is the one everyone else walks past, and sometimes saving a life means saving your own. Abandoned bull was considered too old to reproduce. But what happened next surprised everyone.